So to start things off, we have the acceptance of the council agenda, moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Elphick, that the council of the municipality of Brockton accept the agenda for the regular council meeting on June 23rd, 2020 as presented. All those in favor? Okay, that is carried. Okay. Another unusual, we usually don't do this, but we're going to move back into closed session because we have a one of our engineers waiting for us on this issue. So moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Hutchin, that the council municipality of Brockton enter into the closed session at 7 p.m. in order to address a matter pertaining to personnel matters about identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, a neighbor dispute. All those in favor? Okay, so we'll go in camera then. So we'll now leave this meeting and convene in camera.
Hello again, gentlemen.
Hello again, Fiona.
I'm just confirming.
Looks like we've got counselors here, but their video cameras are turned off.
Yes, they're muted. I'll join them in turning off my video and camera.
And you can't turn on their video cameras, Fiona?
I can try.
Okay. I'd like to welcome everybody back from our closed session. So we'll verify what we did in closed session. Moved by Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor Adams. The Council of Municipal Brockton hereby approves the direction provided to staff in the closed session. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Minutes or nope. Now we're right on to the delegations. So the first delegation, the only well, there's two delegations, both on the Kulin drain. So we have a report from our engineer. So is Mr. Mcgivern back? Yep. Okay. Okay, Mr. Mcgivern, are you ready to present your report on the drain?
Yes, I am.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council and staff. I'm here this evening to present the report on the Kulin Municipal Drain 2020. I trust everyone's had an opportunity to kind of review this report. So in the interest of time, I'll be giving a rather brief overview. If at any time you have any questions or want any clarity on any particular aspect, just ask. This drain serves parts of lots 10 and 11 in concession 14 in the municipality of Brockton, former township of Greenock, and in Bruce County. Dietrich Engineering Limited was appointed by Brockton Council on September 10th, 2019 to prepare an engineer's report under Section 4 of the Drainage Act. The petition filed with the municipality was signed by Mr. Harry Kulin. He's owner of Lot 10, Concession 14. The petition was found to be valid and in compliance with Section 41A of the Drainage Act, meaning it has the majority of owners within the area requiring drainage. An on-site meeting was held on November 8th, 2019 at the municipal office in Walkerton. An information meeting was held at the municipal office in Walkerton on February 19th, 2020. Owner John Wilson, the owner of Lot 11, Concession 14, was not able to attend, so an information package was sent to him for his review. The outlet for this drain is a natural water course that eventually ends up in the Snake Creek, which is part of the Saugeen Valley watershed. The Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority has reviewed this report. They don't have any issues with the report. It will, however, require a permit to alter a water course. That permit has been applied for by Dietrich Engineering on behalf of the township. And once the bylaw is given third reading, then the Conservation Authority will finalize that permit and get it back to us. Recommendations. This tile drain consists of approximately 244 meters of 350 millimeter and 375 millimeter. In other words, 14-inch and 15-inch pipes, one concrete catch basin, and an energy dissipating plunge pool at the outlet. The design standard used for this was 38 millimeter or an 1.5 inch drainage coefficient. The working area and access to working areas are shown on the plan view, drawing number 1. kind of a purple line. The watershed is approximately 14.6 hectares or 36 acres. Now we get to the costs. Allowances under sections 29 and 30 have been provided in this report, and they're shown on a table on page 6. The total allowances on this report were $5,980. The total estimated cost for this project is $62,500, and the distribution of those costs in the form of an assessment schedule can be found on page 9 of our report. It's a yellow page. We've assessed $19,300 out in benefit, which is about 31% of the total cost of the project. We've assessed out $43,200 in outlet liability, which is approximately 69%. And if we want to look at the net costs after the 1/3 grant, which is available for both of the agricultural properties, and both also got allowances. If we want to look at the net costs there, the H&L Kulin farms, a net of $29,548, or that represents 47% of the total cost of the project. The John Wilson property, a net of $3,985, which represents 6% of the total cost of the project. And Brockton owns an unopened road allowance in that area as well, and their costs are $3,231, or they represent 5% of the total cost of the project. And we have a drawing set here. Drawing 1 is the plan and profile for this project, and drawing 2, we have some details of the outlet structure, catch basins, tile connections, plunge pool, that type of thing. And I think that's about it. At this point, I'd like to try to answer any questions anyone might have.
Okay, are there any questions from council? Okay, seeing none, we have Mr. Kulin. He is on the line, proponent of the applicant. Mr. Kulin, would you like to address the application? No, if he, Mr. Kulin, are you there? Can you hear me?
He's on mute.
Mr. Kulin, you have to, oh, there he is. Okay. You there, Harry?
Yeah, ready. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. We can hear you. So would you like to speak to the application?
No, I think it's clear to me. Yeah. No, this is the report we had already discussed, so I'm clear. I'm clear of it. Yeah.
Okay, very good. And council had no questions. So we have a motion later on in the meeting in about 10 minutes to approve the engineer's recommendation in the bylaw coming forward.
Okay, very good.
Okay. All right. So if there's no further questions, we'll move through items 6 and 7. Then when we get to section 8 of the agenda, Mr. Kulin will deal with the motion. Okay, so we have a motion for the minutes moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Elphick, that the council of Brockton adopt the minutes of the June 9th, 2020 council meeting and June 16th special council meeting as presented. All those in favor? Okay, motion is carried. Is there any business arising from those minutes? Councillors? Hearing none, we'll move on to business arising from the minutes. We have 2 motions. One on zero tolerance for racism, moved by Councillor Adams, second by Councillor Hutchin. Whereas on May 25th, 2020, a horrific and racially motivated act of violence took place in Minneapolis, Minnesota that led to the death of a 46-year-old man, George Floyd. And whereas further incidents of racially motivated acts of violence have taken place both locally and abroad, and whereas the Ontario Human Rights Code recognizes that every person has the right to be free from racial discrimination, including anti-Black racism, and whereas the Ontario Racism Act 2017, Section 2017, Chapter 15 advocates for strategies and initiatives that eliminate systemic racism, including initiatives to identify and remove systemic barriers that contribute to inequitable racial outcomes and initiatives to advance racial equity. And whereas we must join together as a community, province, and nation to condemn this type of hatred and racism. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Brockton supports zero tolerance for racism of any kind, including white supremacy. And further, that the Council of the Municipality of Brockton encourages all Ontario municipalities to pass a resolution to support zero tolerance against racism and condemn all racist acts of violence. And that a copy of this resolution be sent to the City of Minneapolis, MPP Lisa Thompson, MPP Bill Walker, Premier Doug Ford, Minister of the Solicitor General, Minister of the Attorney General, Ministry of Indigenous Affairs, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and Association of Municipalities of Ontario. Okay, so we have a motion before us. Any questions about the motion? Deputy Mayor Gierzak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And certainly I support this motion, and I think that the intent behind it, part of my concern, I guess, in terms of passing a motion like this is what it means in terms of practicality for the municipality. What is zero tolerance? And how do we define that? How do we recognize it? Is it zero tolerance for staff? Is it zero tolerance for committees? Is it zero tolerance for corporations we own? And so what is it? What does it mean, zero tolerance?
Okay, well, to me, the motion speaks to the need for the community to be vigilant against whether it's racist jokes or racist comments, or we need to be a welcoming community to all newcomers. And that's why I think it's important to make a statement on the anti-racism.
So if we have zero tolerance, what action do we take when we see a racially motivated act of violence or a racially motivated actor within the municipality, or within our staff or within our committees? I mean, I'm really just want to understand, what does it mean? It's very easy for us to make a statement that says we have zero tolerance, but what does that mean when we're faced with it?
Well, the statement will be followed up by, I think, a great thing that's going on, and the Liberal government came up with the whole community safety plan concept, and those community safety plans certainly address issues like that. I think there's some great people working on those plans throughout Grey Bruce. The government still has affirmed its desire to push through with that community safety plan and asking people for input. And I know that that will be one of those aspects, and it will give, I think it's great because it will give the police the tools to deal with, for example, people who are in mental distress, rather than just a strict policing response, but a mental health approach to those problems. So I think the community safety plan will definitely include the spirit of this motion.
Another question, if I may. I've got a couple of questions, perhaps through you, Mr. Mayor, to Fiona. Is there something in the works, or could we put some sort of policy/bylaw in place that actually speaks to this concern I have in terms of what action do we take when we see a racial act take place?
Through you, Mayor Peabody, I think the intention of the motion is to set a priority for all of staff and, as you noted, all of committees to imbue this principle in all of our decision making, that if we become aware of acts of racism or of racial violence, that this is council's direction to staff, committees, and the community to report those acts, to question those acts, to take all steps that they can in the particular circumstances to ensure that that's known to be wrong, but we can certainly ensure that in all of our policies that we are bringing forward, that we consider the impacts that they may have in terms of through viewing them through a racial lens. That's something we can certainly do. Mayor Peabody has mentioned the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. I'd just like to update council that that committee does continue to meet regularly, and there will be reports forthcoming about implementing that plan in upcoming council meetings. And we can certainly work towards making a policy. A number of our policies already do contain a number of concrete measures that the municipality of Brockton is taking to ensure that we are combating racism and condemning racial violence, from our hiring practices, our personnel policies, etc. And I think this motion sets a priority for staff, committees, and the community that all policies should be imbued with the spirit and intent of this motion.
So this leads me a little bit from where this motion starts out to condemn racism and acts of violence, and certainly gets into a recognition that Nazism and white supremacy is just as heinous. Now, certainly within the last month or so, we've seen how racially motivated false accusations can also be. And so it strikes me that if we don't make a comment with respect to the grievousness of false accusations, that we're again victimizing victims by not recognizing that that false accusations can almost be, and I'm sure many would argue, false accusations are just as racially motivated and just as damaging as the act of physical violence. So this is a little bit personal to me. I do have a very good friend who was beaten by 5 individuals, spent 6 weeks in a coma, and was unable to work for 2 years because he had a white girlfriend, so somebody of a visible minority. And certainly this is very near and dear to my heart, the fact that we can actually try to do something in a positive way in this area. But it really strikes me that in order for zero tolerance to have a meaning, we have to have some bite behind it. And we have to know when to act. And we can't leave that up to the discretion of staff without some guidance. So I think that's the end of my comment. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing your personal experience with us, with your friend. Okay, are there any further questions? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, motion is carried. Okay. On to the advocacy for regionalized lifting of restrictions, moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Elphick. Whereas on April 27, 2020, the Ontario government released a framework for reopening our province, outlining the criteria Ontario Chief Medical Officer of Health and health experts will use to advise the government on loosening emergency measures, as well as guiding principles for the safe gradual reopening of businesses, services, and public spaces. And whereas the framework also provides details on an outreach strategy led by the Ontario Jobs and Recovery Committee. And whereas the City of Kingston and the Public Health Unit have developed a COVID lifting restrictions action plan, which provides an overview of emergency strategies for lifting restrictions imposed as part of public health emergency response measures to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Be it resolved that the Council of Municipality of Brockton encourages the province to develop a regionalized approach to lifting restrictions related to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that the Council of the Municipality of Brockton advocates for a regionalized approach to reopening following the deterioration of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that a copy of the resolution be sent to the City of Kingston, County of Frontenac, Kingston Public Health, Grey Bruce Health Unit, MPP Lisa Thompson, MPP Bill Walker, Premier Doug Ford, and the AMO. So the regional approach is being implemented. I thought it would be good to still discuss this. For example, a lot of parents are concerned that if there was a blanket approach to school reopenings in September, that they would be left with some difficult situations with returning to work. So the regional approach has been implemented, and as of Friday, Windsor will be the only region still not open. But so that's why I thought we should still bring the motion forward, because we're just still in the middle of the pandemic. Phase 2, but of course, if people aren't careful, we'll still be stuck in phase 2. Doesn't mean that we we should be relaxing. Deputy Mayor Gierzak.
Thank you. Yes, certainly support this direction. And like you, I'm concerned about the fall and what the flu season and a potential second wave has. And certainly moving forward with this type of recommendation is important. But I think anything you can do, Your Worship, through your meetings with ministers and with the health unit to stress, test, trace, and confine. As we have those increased cases in the future, it's going to be extremely important to confine those cases to a very small area. If we can do that, we can allow our regions to stay open. But if we don't, if we're not great at that, we're going to fail in the fall. And we already know that there is some still potential weakness in terms of having N95 masks available for the number of people who might require them in the fall. So anything that we can do to continue to stress, test, trace, and confine, I think will be very important. And I appreciate the work that you've done trying to push those things forward.
Yes, thank you. And they did have a good test run up in Erin Elderslie 2 weeks ago with the contact tracing. A lot of people were contacted, and a lot of tests were done. Luckily, they were all negative, but the health unit had to do a lot of work on that. So it seemed to work very well in that case where there was a lot of contacts with the one positive case. So I guess the next thing, Deputy Gierzak, that in the summer we'll have to take a look at is whether or not we, if it gets worse, second wave, you mentioned, support mandatory wearing of masks. That will be a debate. Dr. Era, unlike the Wellington Health Unit, doesn't feel that now is the appropriate time given the low numbers of COVID in the area, because people would rebel against it. He's waiting until there is the correct number, if there is, of COVID before he does what they've done in Wellington. Otherwise, people will rebel and there'll be enforcement issues.
One of the items we talked about during this morning's emergency management control group was stressing the requirement for a proactive plan moving into the fall. So a strategy that clearly lines out for everybody. If the number of cases start to rise, what's the trigger point at which the health unit might suggest that wearing masks becomes mandatory? I think if the general population had an idea of what that strategy looked like, what the trigger points were, they might be a little bit more sensitive to social distancing and hand washing, all of those things that are still required.
Yes.
So again, anything you can do to stress that and perhaps work on those trigger points that we all have a common understanding might be beneficial. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lang.
Just a question on this, just along the lines of what Dan's talking about, is emergency management meetings. The meetings that take place, are they continuing weekly or bi-weekly? And what is the agenda of these meetings? And what is talked about? Is it information that comes from the Grey Bruce Health Unit that is then discussed amongst staff? Just so that we all have an idea of, just more for information, Dan, if you don't mind.
I would defer to Sonia on that. She chairs those meetings and she can give you a thorough background in terms of who attends and why they're important for it.
Thanks, Dan.
Through you, Mayor Peabody, to Councillor, to James. I've lost my train of thought there. Yeah. So we have a weekly meeting right now, and the health unit participates, the OPP as well, and David Smith as our MECG coordinator, and Mike Murphy, and then all senior staff, as well as Paulette and Julie and Chris Wells, and Councillor Mayor Peabody and Deputy Mayor Gierzak, all members identified in the emergency our emergency plan. So then each week we go through reports from each of those areas and the items that we're working on. As the province changes plans, we identify what the openings, how we're going to communicate that, whether it needs to go to council for approval, that type of thing. So, and then all of the risk measures that we're taking to ensure staff's safety and the public's safety in the community.
Okay. No, that's good. And then I was only curious because I know I hear of these other meetings and a lot of other municipalities around us. And I know Dr. Era has a lot of influence on these meetings and the Great Bruce Health Unit as a whole. And I was just curious because I know there's other municipalities around us that are tending to maybe be a little more flexible. I know we're on the very high scale yet. I know there's some buildings that we don't even open up yet that are still considered a bubble to some, and there's others in our neighboring municipalities that are still fluent. So I was just curious on where the information was coming from, and that we as council are on the same page of these meetings. I appreciate that, Sonia. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so we have the motion before us. All those in favor? Okay, opposed? Motion is carried. Moving into section 8, reports. Kulin Municipal Drain Engineers Report, moved by Deputy Mayor Gierzak, seconded by Councillor Hutchin, that the Council Municipality of Brockton hereby approves report number Drain 2022. Kulin Municipal Drain Engineers Report prepared by Sarah Johnson, Junior Deputy Clerk, and Fiona Hamilton, Clerk, and in doing so approves a bylaw coming forward provisionally adopting the Kulin Municipal Drain. So we have the report and the questions answered. All those in favor of the report? The motion carried. Riversdale Bridge correspondence, moved by Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor Adams, that the Council Municipality of Brockton hereby receives report number PW 2020-17 Riversdale Bridge correspondence prepared by Greg Fertney, Director of Operations, for information purposes. Hey, Mr. Fertney, would you like to speak to your report?
Yes, good evening, Council. Through you, Mr. Mayor. This is simply some correspondence that the municipality has gathered over the last week in particular from residents, and it was addressed to council. So we thought we'd bring it forward. I'm not entirely sure who all received these letters. There was 2 formal letters via email, 7 mailed letters, and additionally a petition. The request of all these items, I believe, is a result of the closure of the Riversdale Bridge on June the 1st. And so these are just items that have been brought to my attention. And I felt the council should have all that correspondence for transparency. Also attached is a letter from GM Blue Plan. One of the recommendations that, not recommendations, one of the asks of the residents that were present at the June 1st meeting asked if I would speak to GM Blue Plan in order to determine whether the bridge could be reopened, and that with a load restriction in place. And so attached to this report, you also have a letter from GM Blue Plan. Their response remains the same. To remain closed, the recommendation is to wait until the municipal class environmental assessment is complete before any money or anything else is to be moved on that project. And that is still the staff recommendation as well.
Okay, so the GM Blue Plan will be finishing their environmental assessment and the report will be available in the fall.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct.
And so do we have as part of the environmental assessment, there will be a meeting. So do we have any idea on any dates?
No, not at this time. We're working through the application to the ministry, and there's a couple of more studies that need to be completed, actually 2 or 3. One being a heritage assessment. Yep. And so there's a few things that need to be done before we're at that point.
And at that time, the residents will be able to attend the meeting and present as a delegation?
Yes, GM Blue Plan has agreed to do a full presentation to council and with the various options and the results of the municipal class environmental assessment. And then it'll be to council to decide on how they wish to move forward.
After and then the resident input also will occur.
That's correct.
Yes, okay. So thank you for that report. Councillor Adams.
Yes, I just wanted to talk a little bit. I think there probably are some residents around that Riversdale Bridge concession 2 and folks in Riversdale. And I think we have to admit when we can do better. And I think there was a communication breakdown. It was innocently done, but each resident who uses that bridge should have been informed. We thought we covered that off. And as a councillor, I feel responsible for that. I feel badly for that. And I apologize to those residents. I've been up and down concession 2 as councillors from the last few years know, trying to get improvements. And I think we have had a bit of improvement on concession 2, but those people use that bridge a lot and they didn't get the letter. And I know we were, with Greg's support, we were trying to figure out, we thought maybe with COVID, the mail system was slow and so on. That wasn't the case. It was drawing down from the bridge, and concession 2 folks, again, some of the folks that use that bridge the most were omitted. So we always have to try to do better. And it had absolutely nothing to do with trying to withhold any information from anyone. But I think, as Greg mentioned, the recommendation is still the same. The bridge isn't considered safe. And until we get recommendations from GM Blue Plan in terms of those recommendations, I agree with their recommendations. But we need to make sure when that public meeting is held that every resident that is affected by that bridge, concession 2, Riversdale, and so on, needs to be aware of that meeting so that they can come with their suggestions, their comments, their feedback. We need to do that. And as I said, we always need to get better. I think we'll know going forward, but communicating is so important. And unfortunately, some of the folks didn't know about it until the bridge was being closed. And again, as a councillor, I apologize for that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Adams. And of course, hopefully we will be able to have the residents in attendance at that meeting and not still be on the Zoom 6 months, 5 months from now. Okay, Councillor Elphick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as I see it, there's 2 issues. We have the issue with the bridge and the structure itself, but also an issue around communication. Dealing with the first item, I'd just like to get some clarification about the municipal class environmental assessment. The letter from GM Blue Plan identifies that it'll be completed in early 2021. But I've heard again that it was going to be fall of 2020. So I just want to know when we are going to be getting that, so that residents know when council will have an opportunity to reconsider the opening or the next steps, I should say, of the bridge.
Yes, through your Mayor Peabody. The plan is still to strive for the fall of 2020. And I will make sure, as much power as I have, that is committed to. And that residents throughout that whole area will be notified as well in advance as possible.
Okay,
thank you.
And I'm just wondering if it's possible to speak to that a bit further. I know a lot of residents are very interested in this topic. It's noted in the report that there were 198 signatures. So that's a very big catchment of residents that have some concerns with this topic. What additional steps are we going to be doing for communication? Are we changing the area of search that letters are being sent out? Are we sending things electronically, notifications by email? I'm not sure if we can get some further direction on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the new catchment area will be a 2-kilometer spread, which will cover both sides of Highway 9 in Riversdale, all of concession 20, as well as the majority of concession 2, especially those folks that are most are the closest to the bridge there. And yes, we will do our best to publicly put it into the buzz and social media and so on and so forth, to make sure that everybody is fully aware of the time and day and location of that public meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fernie. Further questions from council? Councillor Lang.
Not a comment, or not a question, more a comment, and just kind of echo what Steve was saying earlier. I know that this communication wasn't done maliciously. We just went through this not long ago with making the difficult decision we did south of Paisley, and the report's done very well. And under different circumstances, I'm sure we've been able to communicate this a little better through in-person meetings to have people attend and so on. So to everything Steve said, it does fall back on us because we're the ones that are. We field the calls, and not just us. I know staff does too, but just hearing from the residents and I know, and he explained to them it wasn't done maliciously. It's different times, but just knowing that moving forward with this, and it's a challenge, as we know, through what we're all going through, getting that messaging out. But I feel bad. I echo Steve, but I know moving forward, if we can have something in person, I think something in person in such of a matter like this is more important than doing this platform. But great report, and being out to that bridge personally, it's no secret that it's it's a bridge that would take a lot to repair, and we did this not long ago just south of Paisley. So I appreciate the challenge among us. We have a decision that's difficult to make.
Deputy Mayor Gierzak.
Thank you. Yeah, certainly support everything that other councillors have said. And I guess it comes to mind that there's really no such thing as over communicating. And sometimes within our policies, I feel that we live up to our policies in terms of the minimum, but we don't go out of our way to exceed expectations in terms of over communicating. And I hope we can find ways to do that in the future. You certainly have my support. I suspect the support of all of council to do what you can to over communicate and make sure we surpass those bare minimum targets that we have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, Mr. Fernie's laid it all out here tonight for the residents and for council. So thank you very much, Mr. Fernie, for putting all that together, compiling it in one report. So it's very clear now, the process. All those in favor of the information report? Any opposed? Carried. Moving on to the Mcgivern Street. Moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Alfeck, that the Council of the Municipality of Brockton hereby approves report number PW 2020-16 Mcgivern Street Rehabilitation Tender prepared by Greg Fernie, Director of Operations, and doing so awards the tender to Curtis Smith Excavating in the amount of $1,308,000, including HST, and in so doing so authorizing and approves the following funding allocation: roads $190,000 and $380 from OSIF funding, and $462,146 from Roads Reserve Fund, sanitary $93,404 from Utilities Reserve Fund, water $164,231 from Utilities Reserve Fund. Okay, Mr. Fernie, don't go away. You're still on. Okay, you need to unmute. You need to unmute. Okay, so we've got this report. Seen some of the email correspondence, so you did a very good job of explaining the ins and outs. So if you'd like to share some of that information with the council before questions.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, this report is for, as you mentioned, the Mcgivern Street project. We had originally identified this project early on in the capital program for 2020, and the original estimate for this project was $475,000, split between the roads, water, and sanitary sewer programs under my portfolio. However, once we started getting into the nitty-gritty details and some of the issues surrounding the hospital and Bruce Lee Haven, we found that there's a lacking in the infrastructure of the underground infrastructure on the road, both sanitary sewer, water main, And then stormwater also became a huge concern. So what we would like to do is move forward with the tendered project. The project was put together by BM Ross and Associates, and staff feel very confident in the recommendations of moving this project forward. And we just ask for council's a blessing, if it so be that. And the project can move forward very quickly and be completed prior to the school opening in September. And it'll have some nice new pavement on top of that, which will certainly help with the road deterioration that exists there, especially in front of the hospital.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor Adams.
Council was served with a little more information from Greg today. Greg, you've done a great job. Your detail is commendable, and it certainly makes it a lot easier when you're agreeing to fairly substantial amounts of money. You understand what you're getting. That low tender company has done some very good work in Walkerton and Brockton, but in Walkerton, 2 projects, South Street and Cayley Street. And before I was on council, I used to have kind of issues with potholes and dust and so on that happens, and especially in higher density populations. This company did a very good job. I hope I don't jinx them, but they have done a very good job in those. They did Cayley Street a couple of years for us, in and out very quickly. They have a little bit different way of doing things. So good company to be working with, I think, Greg. Question I do have though is in both the South Street and the Cayley Street projects, we had a pre-meeting where residents were invited to come out and to hear a bit about the project and also ask questions. And I know in the COVID world here, it's going to be more difficult, but I'm just wondering if there's a way of having some kind of forum where residents can maybe understand a little bit about the project and maybe ask some questions, things like dust control and potholes and so on. I think it's a good thing to do. I know this is an exceptional year, but if there's some way of doing that, I think that would be appreciated.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Adams. We did meet with the senior management team from Bruce Lee Haven as well as the hospital already at this point, as well as the various emergency services staff, EMS, fire, and police. And if council directs me to, I can certainly put together some sort of a Zoom invitation, Zoom meeting for that, or residents can simply contact me and I'd be happy to discuss the project with them. Either way, I'm very comfortable with that.
Okay, good idea. Thank you. Councillor Adams.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Greg, perhaps we'll leave it with you. I know it's much more difficult, obviously, this year, and you want to get the project going as soon as possible. I will say, though, some of the feedback from both meetings, being at that meeting, was very, very positive to have that. Again, like Dan said, communicate. So if we can do it, great. I know if COVID wasn't around, it'd be easy to do it. We go to the fire hall, call the meeting, done. Leave it with you if it's doable.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Elphick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Greg, it was an excellent report. I thought the detail was very helpful. Certainly when I initially read the report, I had a lot of concerns with the difference, almost $1 million difference from what was budgeted. I just wanted to confirm that by proceeding with the project as outlined, that it would be more cost effective for the municipality than if we were to proceed with this as 2 separate projects. Is that a fair statement?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Elphick. Yes, once you start digging, it's best to make sure the whole thing is done at once. And you certainly do not want to do piecemeal with old and new pipe if you can avoid it. And we hope that this project will last 20 plus years or more. And it'll be a really great project to have completed, especially for the emergency services group, as well as the hospital and Bruce Lee Haven. So I would really prefer to do this all at one time. It'll be much more efficient and much quicker. And again, I really have great confidence in this company, and I think we're going to have a good project completed for the municipality.
Mhm. And I just one additional question. I know that there's adjacent factory property there that there might be some opportunities for development in the future. I'm just wondering, does this project need to contemplate any future development for capacity size at all, or would that be a different area of infrastructure?
No, we'll be bringing everything up to code and the proper sizing and volume capacity for water and wastewater. And we feel very comfortable this will not impede any future development issues.
That's very helpful. Thank you again for your work.
Councillor Hutchin?
I just want to say that this road is one of the worst in Walkerton and very heavily traveled. So I think we have to bite the bullet and dip into our reserves and get it done.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have the motion before us. All those in favor? Okay, carried. On to the very important topic. A lot of parents interested in this topic, childcare. Deputy Mayor Gierzak, seconded by Councillor Hutchin. The Council Municipality of Brockton hereby approves report number BCC 2025, Brockton Child Care Center reopening, prepared by Sharon Bross, Brockton Child Care Center Supervisor for information purposes, and confirms and ratifies the decisions made by staff with respect to the Brockton Child Care Center reopening. Okay, the report just came out today. Questions? Councillor Hutchin?
Thank you, Sharon. I think it's a great report. I wish you the best of luck. I'm so happy that you can actually accommodate 46 students. I really thought the numbers were going to be much lower than that. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Further discussion about this report? Okay. Councillor Elphick.
I'm just wondering, for the benefit of anyone joining on the line that hasn't read the report, if Sharon would mind giving a very quick 30-second, minute update about the progress. I had the benefit of being part of the childcare meeting earlier in the week, so just wondering if Sharon could share those details with us.
Sure, I can do that. So basically, the report states that we will tentatively be reopening on July 6th, and we will have 6 cohorts. So in your cohort is a group of 10, so you'll have 2 teachers and 8 children. We will have 3 programs in the center and 3 programs in the St. Teresa of Calcutta School. So a total of 46 children. So we will be able to recall back majority of our full-time, all of our full-time staff and some of our part-time staff. And we're working with the Health and Safety Committee and the Emergency Committee to make sure all the documentation policies are in place for our reopening.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so thank you very much, Sharon and Sonia, for your hard work on this. Came up on June 12th, and then you had to do a lot of scrambling to figure out how to make it work. And certainly the feedback from the parents, a lot of parents depending on this, and certainly looking forward to this service returning in our community. So great work. Councillor Elphick.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just one additional matter. Can you just speak, Sharon, again to the school age program, the number of individuals that we have enrolled in that for the summer months, and if we've been able to accommodate all families that have sought enrollment?
So we will have 16 children in our school age programs. We have 2 cohorts. I don't have the numbers right now who all asked to come back. I'm pretty sure we have all the children that asked to come back that could fit into the scenario that the ministry gave us. That's very strict rules on how many days they have to come a week, and you can't do a lot of scheduled children, unfortunately. So I'm pretty sure we've met almost everyone that's asked to come back. I think there might be 4 or 5 school age program children that we haven't been able to place yet.
Okay, thank you very much for that data. Okay, so we have the report before us. All those in favor? Okay, motion is carried. On to the industrial park sign, moved by Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor Adams. With the Council Municipality of Brockton hereby approves report number ED 2027 Walkerton Industrial Park Sign RFP prepared by Perot, Community Development Coordinator, and In so doing, accepts the proposal of Cox Signs to replace the Walker Industrial Park sign with a new illuminated sign at a cost of $15,000 and $398, with optional skirting added for $345. Okay, questions? Councillor Hutchin.
I just wanted to say that I really liked Holm Graphics' design, but I wish he had actually separated the brickwork skirting out of the quote or made it as an option. I do not believe that LED lighting is necessary, and we'll have to go with the lowest quote.
Councillor Elphick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I fully support the concept of this project, but at the same time, I did drive by the sign that's currently there. And I feel that it's accomplishing the needs as they exist today, and that it has the ability to accomplish the needs that we have, at least in the next 12 months. The municipality is faced with a number of financial pressures as a result of COVID, and I sympathize that this was something that was approved in the budget, but I have some hesitations. I know it's a relatively small number at $15,000 for the overall budget, but we have other expenditures that we've incurred this year unexpectedly. And it's my view that this is one of those projects that maybe could be something that comes further in future years, that it's not something that's a priority in my mind, and that we should be tabling this item for a later point and revisiting it as our finances are better known.
Okay. We'll get some discussion going. Kim, did you have a point?
Well, I just wanted to say that the sign is outdated, and it's one of the first signs that people see as they enter Walkerton. I think it's necessary to be replaced.
Okay, Ms. Watson.
Further to that, through you, Mayor Peabody, I would just say that it was hit, and it's on a slant, so there's a bit of a health and safety dangers with it as well. I do think it is time that it needs replaced. We have had complaints from the businesses in that area because of the condition of it as well.
Okay, further input, Councillor Adams and Councillor Lang.
Yeah, the first part, for those who maybe haven't seen it, that's a picture. I don't know if you can see through that, but it's a fairly rough looking sign at this point.
Yeah.
I hear what Tim's saying, and I certainly concur with that in terms of watching the finances. The sign right now in its current state does not particularly look good on Brockton or Walkerton as people go by it. And that is, image is important. I guess one of the pieces that I found, though, when I was going through it, I took a look at the request for proposals, and I was trying to sort of piece together whether we had actually asked for what we wanted, or we were leaving it to our the people tendering to kind of come up with concepts for us. And I got the sense that maybe it wasn't necessarily an apples to apples comparison. As Kim mentioned, I mean, one of the tenders had brickwork in it and so on. So I'm wondering if we were as clear as we needed to be in terms of getting an apples to apples comparison on the costing of it. That would be the question I would have. I'm not sure who can answer that. But.
Okay, that's a good question.
Through you, Mayor, we kept the RFP quite simple, actually, because initially we were looking for a replacement of the current sign, fairly simple, elegant. We wanted space for the businesses to be able to advertise better, because the current very elongated spaces are not practical with today's logos. The brickwork that you mentioned, Councillor Adams, that was certainly not asked for in the RFP or any kind of thing like that. So yeah, the RFP was fairly basic, intentionally so, and then with an option B for the LED lighting.
Deputy Mayor Gierzak.
Thank you. Yes, just to sort of support some of the things that Paulette indicated, We have in the past as well taken a look at the East Ridge sign and gone through that process in terms of what we need to demonstrate the proper image for Brockton and Walkerton. And this sign at the south end of town is certainly one that's been on the radar for quite some time. We went through a little bit of discussion with respect to what we really need and what the new technology can offer. You know, the LED over the last 5, 10, 15 years has been getting much better and much less expensive. So as I recall some of the discussion, Paulette, we were certainly open to suggestions in the creativity of some of the vendors. And so that's a little bit of the background. I think we were open to people proposing additional capability, but we certainly have a budget to stay within. And with respect to Councillor Elphick's concern with respect to spending money this year, I certainly share that concern. And when this proposal came forward again for this meeting, that was certainly my first consideration. Is this the right year? And I would say, as Councillor Adams indicated, it's kind of on that south end of town. If it was within town and didn't have that exposure to so many people on the sort of Highway 9 and those kinds of areas, that traffic, I think I would side with, let's leave it for another year. We've got other things to spend the money on this year. And I might even suggest turning it back to Paulette and saying, if we're going to spend $15,000, $20,000 on economic development within the municipality this year as a part of the recovery, is that the best place to spend it? And, you know, I think if we had more time, maybe we could find a better place even from that economic development perspective. So, you know, if there was a majority of council that decided not to move forward with this, personally, that wouldn't hurt my feelings, and I would, you know, support council's direction in that area. But because of where it is, I sort of lean towards, let's do it. So, thank you.
Councillor Lang.
Thank you, and through you, everybody. And I appreciate everybody again, like Tim and Dan are saying, but I echo a lot of what Steve is saying. $15,000 big picture is very minimal, and we have to maintain, even though we have what's going on, we need to maintain our image and where it is of coming into town. That anybody coming from the south, where most people do come from, that's the first thing they see when they enter town. And it is a dated sign, and I do appreciate the cost end of it, but I think it's something we need to do. Yeah, there it is, Steve. Yeah, thanks. And it does need, you know, we got big businesses out there that really contribute. I could, you know, United Rentals, you could see right at the top, and we have CNS, and we have Erna Wines. We not name them all out there, but Serendipity and really good milkshakes out there. But these are people that are coming in, you know, from the south end, and that's where a lot of people are coming up in the area. So the cost is low, and I think it's something we need to maintain our image. We've been doing really good things in our community through Paulette and Sonia and their staff. So I support this, and I think it's a great idea.
Councillor Adams.
Just a couple more pieces to this. I would just say, as a general statement, having been in purchasing at one point in my career, I think it's always better if you're going out for a tender to have it very specific, so everybody's bidding on the same thing, and everybody has the same equal footing. And I understand going after creativity and seeing what people have to say, but it's certainly more fair when we're all bidding on the same thing. The second point that I'm going to make is, if you saw that sign when I held it up, there are quite a number of businesses that we already have signage on. The lowest tender had the sign split, so there's going to be some costs involved in getting new sign images onto that sign if it goes ahead. And I'm just wondering, is that something that Brockton will look after, or is that something the businesses would have to look after? Maybe they'd be all right with it, maybe not. They've already got a sign in place. They've already got images in place. And I'm just wondering if anybody's put any thought to that. We're going to have new sign images.
Okay, good question.
One thing to clarify is those businesses are all paying into this sign. They pay an annual fee to the municipality for us keeping it updated and keeping their images current. So I believe it was $250 a year. So, and they were all pulled last year, and we're looking forward to the new sign as well. So, I would say probably we cover that cost because they are paying into it. All of them said they were very eager to get their new logos on them. All of them are dated, and a couple would be added to the sign that are there already.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Elphick.
I feel like I'm on both ends of the spectrum for this report. I'm either, saying that we shouldn't do it, but then I think if council is inclined to do it, that I'm wondering about no LED, in 2020 and all the technology that exists for us to go ahead and replace this sign, but not have any ability for additional advertising, additional messaging to be put into the sign other than what's absolutely fixed. And, looking at the difference in pricing, it seems if we're going to spend 15,000, additional 510, I just think there's more opportunity for us if we were to go ahead and it demonstrates sort of a more modern, sleek sign than just traditional industrial look with the perhaps just straight signage. Those are my comments.
Okay. So we've got the motion. Got the motion on the floor then. So I'll read it again. That we accept the proposal of Cox Signs to replace the Walker Industrial Park sign with a new illuminated sign at a cost of $15,398 with optional skirting added for $345. So that's moved by Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor Adams. We have the discussion. So I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, opposed? Okay, so the motion is carried. Okay, on to the Crime Stoppers. Moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Elphick, that the municipality of Brogan hereby receives report number FIN 2020-23 Crime Stoppers of Grey Bruce 2020 donation request prepared by Trish Sartori, CFO, and Sarah Johnson, Deputy Clerk. In doing so, provides the following direction to staff regarding the donation request. Okay, Councillor Hutchin.
I just wanted to say that as the neighboring municipalities who were questioned, they have not donated to Crime Stoppers in the past. I do not feel that we should support this. And I believe that Crime Stoppers should be going after provincial funds to maintain their.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Adams.
Yes, I imagine that Tim and probably James might want to speak to that, but I'm going to go on here. I feel very strongly supporting Crime Stoppers. I actually went back in my notes, and I know it said no municipalities had. I've got correspondence where municipalities have supported it. They haven't supported it like we have, and we've supported it $500. And I know, James, you were on police services last year. I think they asked for $2,500. This year they're looking for $2,000. I think the need is more this year. It absolutely is more. Because of COVID, they make about $20,000 off their golf tournament, and they also have lottery monies. If you look at their budget, and it wasn't attached in here, but I have the previous year budget, they run this on a dime. Most of it is volunteer. They have one, I think, part-time admin person, doesn't make a lot of money. They pay a small amount for office space. They run it on an absolute dime. And they support our police services. We spend about $2.2 million on police services in Brockton, protective services. They're asking for $2,000. Remember the last time you watched CB24 or any news? They say, this crime happened, ATV stolen, call OPP or Crime Stoppers. They always say, or Crime Stoppers. And we can't come up with $2,000. I think they're probably, I bet you they're pretty close on money because, again, they really rely on that $20,000 to $25,000 you get from the golf tournament and from lottery. They didn't do a presentation to Police Services Board, but we had a discussion, Tim, last week on it. And again, I am thrifty with taxpayers' money. I think this is probably the best use of $2,000 we could do. We are constantly challenged in Brockton, as other municipalities are, to ensure the safety of our residents. I believe that Crime Stoppers helps to do that. And like I said, whenever you look on radio or television, if you don't fund them, but you always say, or call it into Crime Stoppers. I think it's very value added and I really support it.
Okay, Councillor Lang.
Yeah, when I read their support, I was very, as we talk about budget stuff, maintaining things, and I was happy with what we did last year. But to Steve's point, thinking about it a lot more over the course of the day, and actually hearing the presentation not once but twice last year as a member of the police board and then council as well, the value of what Crime Stoppers does, not just for the area, but and it's not just Brockton; it's neighboring as well. So I can't remember exactly what our budget is for donations throughout, and I would imagine maybe we wouldn't be getting as many this year with a lot of cancellations. So if we do one large donation this year, this would be one that I would certainly support.
All right, I guess the issue here is that's why we have a policy that our CFO has been directed to use, and then now we're overriding this, and there will be other requests. There will be other requests of groups that missed out on their golf tournament. How are you going to handle them? So it's tricky ground when we're overriding staff on policies that have been established. If you want to change the policy, that would be the appropriate thing to do. But, okay.
We have done that many times. And this seems to me a particular different situation. Yes, their office is in Owen Sound, but they have direct influence in Brockton and in Walker and all the communities of Brockton. So I see this as different. We had $98,000 in our council reserve fund at the end of the year as well. So there is money out there if we want to do it, if we have the enthusiasm to do it.
Hey, Councillor Hutchin.
Just a question, since a couple of you seem to know this so well. Will Crime Stoppers represent the communities that do not give them a donation?
If I may, Steve, Crime Stoppers is right across. I mean, this is Grey Bruce, but Crime Stoppers is Crime Stoppers. You call the number if you give a tip in. So yeah, they certainly support every municipality where every tip comes in for sure. So yeah, that I don't think it really matters. They're not, they don't support one over the other, whoever gives more money for sure, if that's your question. But
that's why I'm saying they should go to the province for funding, not individual municipalities who have the decision to make whether or not to support it.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about that level. I'm sure they have, and I'm sure they're asking for that right now. I'm sure there's lots of people asking for a lot of money. That's a question I don't know based on the presentation. It's been a little bit since it was presented to us, but yeah, I don't know, but they don't take one municipality or one area over another. It's an area. It's Grey Bruce. If anything, county could be supporting this as well. But that I don't know exactly, but I think it's right across the board.
James, last year when we had the presentation at Police Services Board, and I went through my notes, I'll just say it very quickly. That's a good question Kim had. And we asked the question in terms of what funding they get. They only get a small amount of funding for managing the at-night phone system. They get virtually nothing from the province. You're right, Kim, they probably should be funded, but it isn't. The reality is if somebody sees a crime, they call Crime Stoppers, it gets fed to the OPP, whether it be South Bruce OPP or Owen Sound area or whatever. So to answer your question, they don't say, oh, gee, Brockton didn't support us. We're not putting that through to the OPP. So they do it across the board. They just need some financial help to keep going. And it would be an absolute shame if they had to close shop because they ran out of money.
Okay, so we have to write a number in before we vote. So Tim?
Yeah, so I'll help with that in a sense that I think the report as written suggests that we only have $1,550. Is that what I understand? That would be our allowable amount? Because it says that $450 has been previously used out of the 2,000 that was set aside.
Okay, Trish, do you have a number there?
Is that what I understand that to mean?
Mhm.
So through you, Mayor Peabody. Yes, so in the donation budget, council has $2,000 to donate on its discretion. We've already allocated $450 of that 2,000, so that would leave 1,550. I will also note that there have been some requests that have come forward over my desk or even phone calls that I've kind of just said, we're going to put on hold right now until after the pandemic has taken place to see where we are financially and then evaluate everything at that point in time. Not to put this one in any more of a priority of the others, but there have been some other requests that have come forward since the COVID has started, just to let council know.
Okay,
The other point of clarification I wanted to make is that council in the letter that was submitted by Crime Stoppers was asking for a $2,000 donation in each of the next 2 years. That what's before council would only be to do a 1-year contribution. Just because I didn't see that in the report specifically. So I'd only be supporting a 1-year donation. I do support the organization. I think it's a very valuable organization for the community. You know, I would be quite fine if we were doing the maximum amount. So that's $2,000 or $1,550, whatever the number rolls out to be.
right. So you want to give all the money away and not leave any for anybody else, like the Women's House.
Mayor Peabody.
I didn't say that.
Yeah. Councillor Lang?
If that's the case, then, and I wasn't aware of, and of course, there's lots of other people that are going to be bringing forward. But this is just a suggestion. If this year, if we can, I know there's a police services reserve fund. If we can fund this request or the police services reserve fund, and then we as a council budget from here on moving forward in our police services $2,000 that we don't have to have this letter sent to us. We just budget $2,000 into the budget of the police services board every year on top of as a request. I'm not sure if that's a possibility, but then we leave the money that's in place there for others that ask.
Okay, that's a good question. So Ms. Sartori, can they take money out of the reserves at the PSB?
Yes, that can be done if directed by council.
Would that be through the PSB or would that be through council?
It would be, you could use the Brockton Police Reserve Fund. There is a reserve fund for them.
Yeah. Okay.
And I guess second question to that, or second comment, and Trish, just to clarify, then a bylaw, then moving forward, would I have to present a motion to around budget time that every year we put a line in that $2,000, we budget $2,000 to Crime Stoppers without even having this conversation? We just support them unless otherwise noted?
So if the police service board would like to include a $2,000 donation within their budget, we can do that. And then if at that time council decides they would like to not support it, it's up to them to discuss it at each budget year.
Okay, thanks, Trish.
Okay, so that brings us back to the amount of money to put in, and it's not funded from the donation. It could come out of that PSB reserve. Councillor Adams?
Yeah, very quickly. I hear what James said, and that was what we kind of talked about last year. I see this as, and Tim mentioned it, I think, as a one-year donation. Perhaps at budget time next year, maybe we go back to 500, maybe we go to 1,000. I don't know whether we need to do 2,000, but I think this year, again, with a significant amount of their funds disappeared because of COVID, this is a real need year. So I think I would certainly support at this point just for 2020, and then council look at it and debate it at a more appropriate time.
All right, so the question is what, Deputy Mayor Gierzak?
Yeah, I just need some clarification in terms of the Police Services Board Reserve. Is that something council can vote on, or is that a Police Services Board decision?
So through you, Mayor Peabody, it is a Brockton reserve fund, so it is in the discretion of Brockton as to how they spend those funds. And in the previous years, we have used it to fund different initiatives, including the Black Hat device was used. Those funds were used towards that. So if council wishes to use those funds towards the donation in support of the Police Service Board, I don't think it would be inappropriate.
All right. So what amount of money then? Councillor Elphick?
I just wanted to add, actually, before we get to that point, that I raised this at the Police Services Board meeting, that there was $5,000 budgeted for training and seminars in the 2018 and 2019 year. The maximum was only $1,100 and change that was used. So there's likely going to be funds left over on that budget line. And there's also a number of training and conferences that have been canceled due to COVID. So there'll be some extra dollars available coming out of the budget allocation as it is. So I'm supporting $2,000.
So you want $2,000 out of the PSB reserve fund? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a suitable amount. That's what the letter is asking for. And again, there was a lot of positive comments made by our OPP service about the use of Crime Stoppers.
Okay. All right. So it's the motion reads that the direction to staff is $2,000 funded by the from the PSB reserve fund. So all those in favor of that? Okay. Opposed? Okay, so the motion is carried. All right, on to pandemic incoming document handling policy. Moved by Deputy Mayor Gierzak, seconded by Councillor Hutchin, that the Council of the Municipality of Brockton hereby approves report CLK 2020-21 amended pandemic incoming document handling policy prepared by Fiona Hamilton Clerk, and doing so authorize the bylaw coming forward adopting the amended pandemic incoming document handling policy, and further approves council or committee or local board agenda items will only be printed for council and or committee local board members on request during the remainder of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that following the completion of the pandemic, no documentation will be printed for any council or committee local board member except for requests required for accessibility and the budget documents. Okay, discussion. Deputy Mayor Gierzak, then.
Yeah, I suspect all of us may have printers at home, and I wondered if it alleviates some of the burden if we use our home printers and maybe pick up, the paper at the municipal office where they can buy it in bulk. And anyway, and I'm not sure what the best route is. Cheapest all around is probably to have the municipality to print it off, but in terms of saving travel and things like that, I wonder if there's some accommodation there in terms of us using municipal paper.
Okay, I don't know if that would be okay or not. I guess we ask Ms. Watson, would that be okay? If someone needed some paper.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Peabody. I think it's just been a practice of previous saving money, even from the previous municipality I was at. It wasn't a practice to print agenda documents when they're available online. However, if that's something council wants to do jointly, we can provide paper to councillors. That would be, you do have to be prepared for the meetings. So that would be a solution.
No, that's a good idea, Dan. Maybe everybody, we could budget that everybody gets 500 sheets of paper and see where we go from there. Because certainly these Zoom meetings, it is, unless you have two devices running, it's a little bit difficult to remember what's being referenced. Councillor Elphick.
So I'll just address that. I actually recently had some issues with getting some items printed. They were all printed fine. That is what it is. I worry about a policy in place that's as rigid as what's being proposed. It references, except for requests required for accessibility and budget documents. It speaks to the COVID-19 pandemic and some of the unique needs that I have deal with just the fact that we're using Zoom. Nothing but COVID. just the fact that we're using Zoom. So if it's the will of Brockton Council to in the future use video conferencing software, the laptop equipment that's supplied to view the reports, didn't factor in the fact that we were using those as well now for Zoom. So could I get some clarification about whether it's linked to the COVID pandemic or whether it's going to be for so long that we're able to use our laptops to actually read the reports?
Okay.
I think
Staff, just answer
through,
that. Yeah.
through you, Mayor Peabody, I think it's just that we need clarification. It has been a long standing practice. And like I said, not just specific to Brockton, that when you're doing electronic agendas, the whole point of that is, it does take staff time to prepare an electronic agenda. It also takes staff time to then, we used to prepare electronic or paper packages and then deliver them to all councillors, but we went to electronic agendas for a reason. So, if during our Zoom sessions paper is needed, then I think we can all agree on that. And but moving forward, electronic agendas, we're doing them for a reason. They're a cost-saving measure, and we're providing documents electronically.
And so I just want to build off that because the report doesn't speak to, so it just kind of leaves the discretion open. And I'm just wondering who will be monitoring the discretion. Is it the clerk's office that will be required to receive some sort of material to suggest it's for accessibility purposes, or what's the threshold for determining that?
If somebody has an accessibility concern, they would contact the clerk's office. She's responsible for accessibility.
And so there'd be specific questions asked to those individuals about providing documents, or would that individual, I'm just thinking of committee members that have accessibility concerns, are they required to provide supporting information to the clerk's office?
I don't think we would give anybody a hassle about having an accessibility issue. They would work with that applicant. We have a duty to provide them in an accessible manner.
Okay.
To a limited cost,
All right.
keeping cost in mind.
Other people with questions. Councillor Lang?
Yeah, kind of an interesting report, and I just the basic of it, I don't know, as someone who's elected by ratepayers, I don't see why we as councillors can't enter. I know, well, the mayor really doesn't have an office either. He just has a room at the end of the hall, but we're kind of set up kind of different, but I don't see that we as councillors can't enter the municipal building to one room. It may be the same room the mayor uses as an office to print something off Brockton related without having to get a ream of paper sent to our home. Just day-to-day business stuff that we do. And I know there's in past practice, and I'm all for paperless. I think that's great, but just us doing business. If we have committee meetings that we need to attend to, we want to quick print something off that we can more explain a little better in person. That we could just enter, print something off, and leave. I don't know. It just seems.
Good question, James. So
it just seems a little ridiculous to have to. I know Councillor Adams, him and I know he has his own setup, but I don't have that set up at home. And if I want to go print something off to take up to a meeting to show something, I have to be creative. So just something easy for us to go. I mean, we are councillors in the municipality. For us to be able to print something off quick, I don't know.
Okay, James, good question. So can we print from, I've never tried it. Can we print off our laptops from the boardroom?
I would say they'd have to refer to Trish, but I think they'd all have to be connected to the printer there, which would likely be possible.
Yeah, so through you, Mayor Peabody, at this time, I'm not sure if all of the councillor laptops are set up to connect to the printer, but that's definitely something we can look into.
So that would alleviate that. We can come in the side door there and still maintain the social distancing. And James, I'll give you permission to use my little desk in the corner there, and can press print. So can try it that way. I think that would meet the goals of obviously I don't think anybody wants 500 pages printed. Maybe just specific report, like the, some of the charts for the upcoming Baptist church discussion would be, pictures would be helpful to look at right now. Something like that. Okay, Deputy Mayor Garza, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just say I'm not going to make an hour round trip into Walkerton to pick up some papers. So if I can pick up, a stack of 500 pages and then print them off as needed, and it saves me an hour round trip, that's what I'm going to do. And if it's not feasible to do that, I'll continue to do it.
Well, that's a good idea, that part. Councillor Hutchin?
It's not really the cost of the paper, it's more the cost of the ink cartridges. In the past, we used to be given an allowance as councillors for having a home office, and that disappeared a few years ago. Maybe we should consider adopting a certain allowance for this year because of this situation.
For a printer. Or the cartridges. That's the expensive thing. Okay, Councillor Adams?
I'll just say, probably no one even remotely comes close to me in terms of printing things off with my laser printers and my paper. That's what James was referring to. And I'm totally fine with paying for that. That's just my 2 bits. I don't, I'll pay for my paper. I go through more toner cartridges than I would actually want you to know, but I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I'll come into Steve's place to use his printer. How's that?
Okay, so we got the motion here, so we need to.
You didn't want that hour trip. Come on.
We need to. Okay, so we're going to let those who ask. They have the 500 sheets of paper to start, and then we're going to facilitate printing from our laptops from the boardroom to get those papers. Is that okay, Ms. Watson?
Yeah, I think that will work. It's just if we have staff printing for different counselors all over, it does create a significant amount of different staff time at different times. So that would help with if we can connect the laptops, so we can look into that, Trish.
Okay. And just an add, maybe something too, we contact Sonia or someone before we go there so that they know we're coming, that, just for a communication piece. Just a thought.
Okay. All right, all those in favor? All those in favor? I only see 2 hands.
Sorry, can you clarify what we're voting on? I've sort of lost track of, I think, where this conversation has went. So if I look at the report as it's being drafted, is that what we're voting on?
Yep, the report.
All those restrictions?
Yep. And then the direction about the printing from, setting up your laptop so you can print from the boardroom, as well as assisting Dan with and people who live far away with some paper if they choose to print on their own.
So what direction about committee members though? So it speaks to council and committees. So just can I get some clarification on how we're facilitating it for committee members? Are chairs of committees entitled to so much paper as well?
I don't know. Is that what council thinks is sufficient? Or is it too much?
I'm just wondering if going to this level of detail isn't perhaps really necessary. I think that if we can start the conversation with, if the concern is about council printing, can we take those recommendations that we've talked about tonight back, see what can be accomplished with being able to access the printer of the office through council laptops, supply of paper, those types of things to alleviate that concern. But the recommendation is just, it's really getting specific, and I'm not sure if that's the overall intention here, that we would start drilling down how many sheets of paper we'd be printing off to do business of the municipality.
Right, so you want to make a motion to table to clarify things on those details discussed?
I certainly would.
Is there a seconder to table? Councillor Adams.
Through you, Mayor Peabody, I think it seemed as if there was certainly consensus from council, at least at the beginning. So perhaps we could just strike out the committees, and I can bring something else about committees, but at least then we'd be able to move forward in making the arrangements with the council laptop at this time. Just a suggestion to move forward on that point, and we can consider something else about committee. So perhaps we could have just amend to strike out committees.
And I would like the document handling policy ratified.
Yeah, two separate pieces, and so I should have clarified that. Sorry, just the piece on the printing. If we could separate that item, and based on the will of council.
And Mayor Peabody, if I may, through you, just not to, like, this is, we've talked about this a lot longer than probably should have, but as committees, like we are counselors that represent committees. So if someone on a committee needs something, then wouldn't they just contact either the staff liaison or the counselor that represents that committee instead of, like, wouldn't we just keep it the way it is? Talk about the counselor, if they contact the counselor to have something printed off, or contact the staff liaison to have something printed off, instead, just to simplify this, and we or the staff representative could then bring that forward to a meeting. I don't want, it seems like this is getting way too complicated over.
Well, I did accept a motion to table, so let's vote on that. See where that goes, because you're right, James, it's all over the map here with complications.
So, Mr. Mayor, sorry, just to clarify, the motion to table, though, is strictly on the council printing item. I hear what Ms. Watson is saying about the incoming document handling. So the motion to table would be limited just to the printing topic.
All right, very good. All in favor of tabling the printing council printing option? We had a mover and a seconder. Okay, and all those opposed? Okay, so that tabling passes. And then we've got the pandemic handling document policy. All those in favor of that portion of the motion? Okay, so that motion, that part carried. Okay, moving on to Walker West, moved by Councillor Lang, second by Councillor Adams. The Council of Municipal Brockton hereby approves report number CAO 2020-11, Walker West Estate Subdivision Agreement Amendment prepared by Sonny Watson, CAO, and so doing approves the amendments to the subdivision agreement for Walker West Estates as outlined and authorizes the amending bylaw coming forward. Okay. So I just wanted to, so with the fence, I had trouble looking at that map there. Maybe I should have printed it off, but so
Do you just want me to summarize, or?
Yeah, the fence, yeah.
Okay, so through you, Mayor Peabody, originally within the subdivision agreement, the original fence was to be 5 feet high of chain link fence to go on the property line right behind the lots along the back of where the stormwater management pond goes. Some of the lots were sold, and those homeowners had concerns with the fence being along the lot line. So to make a long story short, the new proposal for the stormwater management pond, staff is still very adamant that we are trying to mitigate future risks to person and property. So a fence is needed around that whole stormwater management pond. It does hold water at all times. It's a wet pond with fairly steep slopes. So if a child was to kick a ball in the pond or happen to slip in the pond, there is a real risk there. So in an effort to work with these residents, we're proposing the 5 foot high chain link fence be located inside the perimeter of the pond, but around the whole pond. This would leave an area outside of the pond that could be, it will be a natural area, but could be used by anybody in the subdivision. This will leave what I would call it's municipal property. So there'll be the resident lot line, then there will be municipal property, and then the stormwater management pond. So there is an area there that we could have concerns with future maintenance, but it is expected that these residents are building nice homes and will likely be maintaining that themselves. The municipality will go in a couple times a year and ensure the weeds are maintained and with minimal grass cutting. But this was not designed as a park area. It's a natural area.
Okay, and yes, the grass will be it's been hydro seeded already, and a hybrid grass that grows to 6 inches. It's on the Thomas Street Hill, the embankment. If anybody wants to look at what type of grass it is, but the residents may, if it's right on their property line, we may expect to see them cut it, which would be fine. It's like our right of way in front of our houses. Okay, Councillor Hutchin.
I just wanted to thank Ms. Watson for coming up with this great solution. I agree that the water should be surrounded by a fence just to protect ourselves, especially from liability. And then it keeps the purchasers of the new property very happy. Thank you.
Okay.
Further to that, Mayor, I just want to be clear too that so the second issue is the page wire fence. There was a page wire fence along the whole farm property to the west. So that is also came if we were doing this amendment up as an issue to look at that we could possibly amend. So Mr. Strader is working with the neighboring owner right now on getting written consent that he is okay with the page wire fence only going around block 140, which is the stormwater management pond area. And should we receive that consent, then that is the only reason that the page wire fence it was located there, was because of the adjacent owner. So then it would not be in the backyards of a number of those homes along the west side. So we should have that answer by tomorrow.
Okay, Councillor Elphick.
Just to clarify through you, Mr. Mayor, so is it going to be black chain link around the whole stormwater management pond or page wire across the west and south?
So there will be black page wire, or sorry, black chain link fence around the whole stormwater management pond, but within the bank.
Okay, like sunken down and about 5 feet
Yeah.
or something. Okay.
Yeah. And then the page wire fence will just be on the west side of block 140 of the stormwater management pond area. So just towards the farmland to the west.
Okay. And sorry, can you just help me with why the change in fence again? Like why?
Which one? The page
So,
wire?
there's separate fences. So there's the black along the stormwater management and then a page along the property line. So there actually be some space between the end of the stormwater management and the property line. It's not going right over the property line with the black chain link fence.
So you're cutting out there a bit, but there'll definitely be a space between the stormwater management pond area and the page wire fence, yes.
Okay.
And the intent of that fence, you know, is to keep people off the farmland or, you know, dirt bikes, if should any arise back there.
Okay. Any concerns with individuals walking across the back of those properties if we move the black chain link fence down 5 feet?
That it's a definite concern. It would be an area that could be used for anybody in that area. We don't have a way of, we won't have a way of restricting that when it's not on the property line. It would be a municipal property that's available to everybody.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay. All right, so yes, I was up there tonight and a lot of water in that pond, and it's flowing very violently through it. So, you know, the fence, the ring fence, Councillor Hutchin, good idea. And then it satisfies the needs of the residents. Okay, all those in favor of that? Okay, that's carried. Sidewalk patio applications moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Elphick, that the Council of Municipality of Barton hereby approves report number CA 2012 sidewalk patio application requirements prepared by Sonia Watson, CAO, and Greg Fertney, Director of Operations, and Callie Mann, Executive Coordinator, and in doing so approves bringing a bylaw forward to adopt the sidewalk patio requirements and an application process outlined, and further approves the inclusion of a $100 yearly sidewalk patio fee in the consolidated fees bylaw, and further that any municipal fees for sidewalk patios in Brockton be waived for 2020 to support business recovery efforts. Okay, discussion on that. Okay, all those in favor? Or Kim, you had a question?
No, I support it 100%.
All right.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Just in the report, it mentions that the municipality has a $250 fee for encroachment agreements, and then there's the $100 yearly fee. Are we suggesting to waive the $250 fee for any agreements entered in this year as well, or just the yearly application fee?
Through you, Mayor Peabody, I was recommending that both fees be waived for 2020.
Okay, thank you. And I support the report. Good
All
work.
right, well, very good. Thank you to the staff. Hopefully we'll see some uptake on that with our businesses. I know there's one that's very interested, and it would certainly make the downtown look very vibrant and alive through the summer. So hopefully we'll see something with that. Okay, on to the alterations to the former Walkerton Baptist Church. Moved by Deputy Mayor Gierzak, seconded by Councillor Hutchin, that the Council of Municipality of Brockton hereby approves report number CLK 2020-22 alterations to former Walkerton Baptist Church, prepared by Fiona Hamlin Clerk, and further approves moving forward with option blank relating to the proposed alteration to the building, and option blank relating to the parking plan, and direct staff as follows in relation to the grant application. So 3 items on this motion, 3 options.
Just a point of order, if I may, Mr. Mayor. Did we vote on the patio application report?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Missed that then.
Okay. All right, so a lot of information here that came out just today. So, so we've got a number of options, lots of choices here. I'm not sure how to break it out. Okay, Ms. Hamilton, would you like to speak to the report maybe, since it's broad ranging?
Through you, Mayor Peabody, there are a number of alterations to the proposed alterations. I would just like to confirm that Mr. Fisher is also attending the meeting. We could arrange for him to answer any questions. I believe he was intending, but I'm not sure I see him as an attendee. If there are questions, my proposal in terms of how council may wish to proceed, because I understand there's a number of moving parts. There are a number of options that are laid out for the report. Of course, the first option would be the recommendation that was made by the Heritage Committee. The other options that are dealing with simply the building portion, the land portion, and the grant. So I've tried to separate those out, but of course it's entirely up to council how you wish to proceed with those particular elements. I'm also able to answer any questions about what might have occurred in the Heritage Committee meeting yesterday evening as well.
Okay, let's do with the first part. So since we don't, I read the report today. This is, as I said, I could have printed this off and benefited right now. So what are the on the first one? What are the can you review the options for us?
Yes. So ultimately, under the Heritage Act, council has the ability to approve all of the proposed alterations, can approve the alterations with terms and conditions, or could refuse the alterations. That would apply to the building. It would also apply to the land. And in this case, there are a number of proposed alterations. The Brockton Heritage Committee has recommended that a large number, with the exception of 3, receive conditional approval upon further drawings or elevations being submitted. Mr. Fisher did provide further submissions this morning and has indicated that those will be the final submissions that will be forthcoming, as the cost for him of obtaining additional drawings would be prohibitive. So council could review all of the alterations to the building and decide to approve if council felt that there was sufficient information. Council could approve some of the alterations and perhaps leave others, maybe those that the consultant recommended for refusal, or council could approve and ask for more information, or council could defer entirely. Obviously, the proponent of the project would prefer that they be approved unconditionally. That would allow some to continue. So if council felt that the submissions were sufficient to have a good sense of what the applicant was proposing to do and what the exterior of the building would look like, and felt that those alterations were appropriate, then they could you could choose to approve those with no conditions. There are the three that the consultant had recommended for refusal that the were highlighted in red on the chart of alterations. Those three were the exterior pot lights, which I believe the proponent is requesting for insurance purposes. The replacement of the white door facing Cayley Street with a new, more period-looking modern door, and the three windows. Those were the three elements that were sort of more the consultant recommended refusal. So it's up to council ultimately whether to summarize the options. Option 1 is to defer as the Brockton Heritage Committee's recommended. Option 2A, I believe, is conditional approval with more drawings. Option 2B, I believe, is complete approval with no further drawings. And option 3 would be a refusal. And that's with respect to the buildings. The same options apply to the parking lot, but you may wish to choose, council may choose to, for clarity, to deal with each element on its own.
Let's deal with this first one. So you've outlined them. So let's see where what council's leaning towards on these options. Dan, you had your hand up first, then Kim.
Thank you, Your Worship. Certainly, I appreciate all of the things that the Heritage Committee does and value the work within the community in terms of our heritage is extremely important, and it's extremely important that we don't end up a box store community where you can't really tell where you are because all the stores look the same. So the Heritage Committee does an awful lot to preserve the soul of our community. Having said that, I also think that the work that Mr. Fisher is doing is tremendous. He's preserving a building. He's putting life into it. I think he's doing something that the founders of the community would appreciate. The building still being used and lived in and functionally very significant within the community. So I really appreciate the work that he's doing to preserve that part of our history. And I would support 2B, the complete approval with no drawings. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. There's a discussion point. Kim, you had your hand up next.
Thank you. I actually wrote a statement. I am a great supporter of our heritage, but not at all costs. I owned one historic property in Walkerton and now one in Chepstow. If either had had a heritage designation, I never would have purchased them. The restrictions on them are cost prohibitive. I believe updating these properties is necessary and can be done respecting the architecture while making them energy efficient. The windows and doors Mr. Fisher has selected are in keeping with the existing look. I replaced most of the windows at both my properties. Many didn't notice because I did it in a similar style. Only I noticed because I reduced my heating bill significantly. The Walker House on McNabb Street has a heritage designation and was renovated about 20 years ago. The windows were replaced with vinyl and a new steel door at the front entry. No one stopped them. The owners of the Hartley House, which also has a heritage designation, wanted to replace their windows, but were told by the Heritage Committee that they must use wooden sash windows at 3 times the cost. Now this building sits in total disrepair because of the costs. One day we'll just watch that building fall to the ground because no one is going to put any more money into it. I believe Mr. Fisher should be encouraged to finish this project the way he has proposed without delay, providing the removed original windows and doors are kept in storage at the building to ensure the building could be restored to its original state if necessary. And that would be in keeping with the Ontario Heritage Toolkit. Thank you.
Hey, well, thank you, Kim. That's very good insight and very good personal knowledge of your work in on heritage homes. Councillor Lang.
I don't know how I follow that. Come on, Kim. I certainly agree with both Dan and Kim. I support everything. Mr. Fisher's been very supportive in this. One, purchasing the property and restoring it to a functional business / residential piece in our municipality. I also too support heritage, but I support 2B. I think he's done a great job, and I continue to support him from day one.
Okay, Councillor Elphick.
I commend Mr. Fisher for the work he's done. He's been proactive from the outset of the purchase of this property. Actually, I think even before, to communicate with the Heritage Committee about his intentions. I think that to echo some of Councillor Hutchins' comments, that this allows for great renewal of this property, and I support option 2B. Thank you.
Okay, so that's just one item. We've got lots more to discuss. Councillor Adams, did you want to talk about option 2B?
Yeah, I guess I was just going to say the one concern I think we all have, the last couple of meetings we've been talking about supporting our committees, and we would be taking that deliberation piece away from this committee because I think they are looking at moving forward. However, Mr. Fisher has said he's not prepared to provide any more drawings, and I get the sense that he's hit a bit of a threshold where he has to look after his interests financially on this building as well, and it sounds like he's concerned he's heading down a pretty expensive avenue. So again, I support the committee, but I can see if I were in Mr. Fisher's shoes, I think I would feel the same way, and it does look like he's got a good plan for that building. The last comment that I would make, though, is I think we brought it up before. I think, Kim, you mentioned it. I think it's probably wise for Brockton to relook at all the designated properties and make sure that the current owners understand the costs and the requirements to keep them under the Heritage Act. I think that's a wise thing, and people may be surprised, and they may support it, but I think we should do that.
Okay.
Mayor Peabody, just quick on that, just to add off Steve's, if you don't mind, I just want to note something, and I respect everything Steve said because I'm a big supporter of all our committees. I just want to remind everybody that we also did not support the recommendation of our Parks and Rec Committee last Tuesday. I'm just gonna throw that in there real quick.
Okay. But Kim, we should quick to the parking.
I think Councillor Adams should know that whenever anyone buys a designated property, it's fully disclosed at the time of purchase.
Okay, so we're going to write 2B in for the motion, not vote on it now because we got the parking. So there's an option there with the parking, the grading, which would go up against the foundation. I visited the site. That's an option I prefer. I would like to save those beautiful maples that are on the property line, and that's a concern of the neighbor next door. So I would hate to see those huge trees taken down for parking. So I don't know what others feel on that one. What option was that labeled, Ms. Hamilton? I don't have it in front of me.
I think you could simply write approved for that option, Mayor Peabody. Thank you.
Approved. Okay. Now we're on to the grant. $5,000. What do people feel about the grant? I think it was 5,000. Yes, it was. Okay, so I'll write 5,000 in. Councillor Adams.
Just a question. When we've departed a little bit from the recommendation from Heritage and from the Heritage Act somewhat, does that still allow us to grant the money, or is that a municipal decision only? It doesn't have anything to do with the Heritage Act.
That's a good question.
Through you, Mayor Peabody, I believe that the Brockton Community Heritage Reserve Fund was initially established using funds that were given from a provincially administered program. Unfortunately, that program is now defunct. It's not existing anymore. As a result, it is still a Brockton Reserve Fund and would be up to council to have discretion about that. The loan application package that anticipates grants does link it to being a loan. But Mr. Fisher's made it quite clear that in this case, he's not interested in an additional loan, which would, according to the requirements of that package, require putting a mortgage on the property and then making those payments. So I don't believe that there are any restrictions on that Brockton Community Heritage Reserve Fund at this time. It would still be used to be maintaining heritage attributes. And as noted in the report, any maintenance of those attributes benefits all of Brockton by keeping this important historic building in an excellent state of repair. And that's why the grant might be appropriate, because while one property owner may be benefiting, he has also expended significant cost to keep a property in a state that benefits all of Brockton, and as Deputy Mayor Gierzak said, helps to keep the character and texture of our downtown Walkerton.
Okay. All right, so we have the motion. I'll read it again. And further, we approve moving forward with option 2B relating to the proposed alteration of the building, and the option approved relating to the proposed parking plan, and direct staff as follows in relation to the grant application, $5,000. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, opposed? Motion is carried. So that finishes up reports. And we're on to the public notification, the notice of impending lane closures, Lobby's Bridge repair, Bruce County notice of Bruce Road 3 construction, Bruce County Bruce Road 4 construction, and the Brockton Day Canada Day celebration. The Municipality of Brockton is hosting a virtual Canada Day celebration July 1st, 2020, including a community video and virtual fireworks. And the details are on our website. Moving along to the accounts. Moved by Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor Adams, that the Council of the Municipality of Brockton approve payment of the accounts in the amount of $386,950.69. All those in favor of the accounts? Okay, that's approved. Moving on to the information items, moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Elphick, that the Council of the Municipality of Brockton hereby receives all items provided in section 11. Information. Kim, you had a question?
Not a question. I'd like to support 12.1.
Okay, so we'll bring that forward in July. Okay, any others? All right, all those in favor? Okay, that motion is carried. Our bylaws moved by Deputy Mayor Gierzak, seconded by Councillor Hutchin, that the Council of the Municipality of Brockton authorizes the following bylaws to be read, enacted, signed, sealed, numbered as followed. Bylaw 2020-74, amend flag etiquette and protocol policy bylaw. Bylaw 2020-75, amend restrict access to Brockton Parks bylaw. Bylaw 2020-76, amend pandemic policies bylaw. Bylaw 2020-78, amend Walker Estates Inc. subdivision agreement bylaw. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Drain bylaw moved by Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor Adams. The Council of the Municipality of Brockton authorizes the following bylaw be read a first and second time and be provisionally adopted as followed. Bylaw 2020-77, Kulin Municipal Drain bylaw. All those in favor? Carried. Committee minutes moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Elphick, that the Council of the Municipality of Brockton receive the minutes of the following committees and or boards as presented. Brockton Police Service Board, February 20th. Walkerton 150, February 19th. Walkerton 150, March 11th. Any questions about the minutes? All those in favor? Motion is carried. So that leads us to business brought forward. Councillor Hutchin.
I've been asked by a lot of residents in Greenock when our Greenock dump is going to be reopened. Any ideas, Mr. Courtney?
Excellent question.
Through you, Mayor Peabody. I'm anticipating July. However, it has not been confirmed through the Municipal Emergency Control Group as to an exact date. I do have a staff member that I need to deal with before I go ahead with that, but we will be looking at that very shortly. And so my anticipation is July.
Thank you.
Councillor Lang.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Peabody, and you and staff and are probably aware of this one already. This has happened last year. I understand it's happened years prior to me being on council. A resident, Mr. Tanner, contacted me, who lives on Airport Road, about wild parsnip last year. He had eventually had the county come out to look after it. He's contacted me again, just asking. I think it was cut last year by our municipality. Maybe just a question, Greg. I don't know if you dealt with that last year or powers to be before you. I'm not sure if he's reached out to you or not, but he's given me an address. Just wondering if that can be taken care of again, if possible, or he should carry on with the county.
Through you, Mayor Peabody, we have a number of sites that have come to my attention recently, and I'm trying to establish the correct protocol. I have reached out to the Bruce County Weed Inspector, and I'll be trying to coordinate some kind of effort there. If you want to pass on that name and address to me, I'd be happy to reach out to the property owner.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Yeah, I'll forward that to you, and yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks.
All right. Any further business? Deputy Mayor Gierzak.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I just wanted to bring to the attention of council and staff that our airport manager has handed in his resignation, so effective August the 17th. So he handles all the operations at the airport, so essentially himself and two others, all the grounds maintenance as well as air traffic maintenance. So that happened last Wednesday. We had an emergency meeting on Wednesday and or on Friday, and we've got a number of interviews set up for this Thursday. So we hope to have someone in place to have a smooth transition come the August 17th timeframe. That's all I have for new business.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Elphick.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wondered what the practice is for our roads department for clearing of trees from stop signs. I had a resident bring to my attention a concern. I guess the County of Bruce doing road work up on County Road 3 that some of the traffic was being routed down municipal roads. I guess the trees, I guess, are getting quite extended there. I'm just wondering if they should be notifying the roads department or if there is some proactive work being done for the roads and turn back brush and stuff that's potentially impeding the view of a stop sign.
Through you, Mayor Peabody, we do regular patrols. However, we don't cover all the areas. If you have that information, I'd be happy to take it and we'll deal with it right away.
Yeah, I can provide it to you. It's on the Brant-Greenock Town line at concession 12.
Okay, thank you.
It's just the route that was the County of Bruce was routing traffic on the day of the closures, I think June 15th and 16th. They mentioned that the stop sign was quick to come to them.
Understood. We'll take care of that.
Okay. I just wanted to bring up, I had a chance to go up and ride out and observe the speed bumps. One of the residents is quite concerned about how it's working. So he didn't come in time for this week's agenda. I've talked to Mr. Fertney about it, but if you get a chance to go up to the ride out street speed bumps and observe things, I'm not sure we can make some refinements up there. But some of you saw the letter, but it's too late for the agenda. So one councillor responded. Anyway, that's just something. If you're out and about, go and see how you think that's working. Okay, any other points brought forward? Councillor Elphick?
So just not directly related, but I know that the Police Services Board recently met and working on reestablishing the use of our Black Cat radar device. So I'm not sure if that's something that we can use to reevaluate some of these roads that we have measured in the past. I'm just wondering if staff have any further update as of today, what that implementation plan looks like as getting that unit back online.
Okay, yeah, Ms. Watson or Mr. Ferdy has the Black Cat.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We are working through that process. We have staff now trained to set it up, and we were going to do a trial run. The machine just came back within the last month from being repaired, and so we have plans this week actually to set it up and do a trial, and then we provided the Police Services Board an opportunity to help us by way of a form sheet to give us more guidance on where they would like to have it put up, where and when and for how long. And so we're going to move through that process. And I hope to set it up every other week. And we have quite a list of roads to tackle as directed by the Police Services Board. And we'll certainly get through that. And that information will be sent on to the OPP for their statistical analysis and to come back with some kind of answer for us so that we can move forward on whatever traffic calming measures or anything else that may arise.
Thank you, Mr. Ferdinand. We have the confirmation of proceedings moved by Deputy Mayor Gierzak, seconded by Councillor Hutchin, that the Council of Municipality of Brockton authorizes the following bylaw be read and acted, signed, sealed, numbered as followed. Bylaw 2020-79, June 23rd, 2020, confirmatory bylaw. All those in favor? It's carried. We have a motion to adjourn. Before I read that, I'd like to thank our staff for we're more than 100 days into the COVID and the state of emergency. I'd like to thank the staff for all their work in handling the daily proceedings of the municipality, like Walker West, as well as the emergency. And looking at the calendar here, we've got a 21-day break. So hopefully both council and the senior staff can take a well-deserved break as we head into the warm summer months. I hope everybody enjoys our summer recess. Moved by Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor Adams. The Council of Municipality of Brockton does now hereby adjourn at 9:28 to meet again July 14th, 2020. All those in favor? It's carried. Okay. All right. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good
Have a
night.
great evening.